Let's begin here in Africa. All right, we're beginning with matters arising in Africa. The World Food Programme says about 25 million persons are now facing extreme hunger, and that's talking of about half of Sudan's population. More than 3 million people have been forced to flee the country to seek refuge in neighboring nations like Chad and Egypt. We'll have a report on this disturbing situation.
Be they young or old, Sudanese are no doubt familiar with bullets and bombs. It is now 2 years since the outbreak of civil war in the country. Humanitarian agencies say the need of the devastated people are widening, especially in the capital, Khartoum. Associate spokesperson for the UN Secretary General, Stephanie Tembley, says the situation is deeply alarming as limited humanitarian aid trickle into accessible areas.
I have a statement by the Secretary General on the second anniversary of the Sudanese conflict. 2 years into a devastating war, Sudan remains in a crisis of staggering proportions, with civilians paying the highest price. Indiscriminate shelling and airstrikes continue to kill and maim. Markets, hospitals, schools, places of worship, and displacement sites are being attacked. Sexual violence is rampant, with women and girls subjected to horrific acts. Civilians suffer from gross violations and abuses from all warring parties. Almost 12 million people have fled their homes in what has become the world's largest displacement crisis. More than 3.8 million of these have crossed into neighboring countries. More than 30 million people require humanitarian support.
The Sudanese capital, Khartoum, once a bustling metropolis, now lies in ruins. It is one of the epicenters of the conflicts that erupted on the 15th of April, 2023. The war, sparked by a violent power struggle between the Sudanese military and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, RSF, has left at least 20,000 people dead. The real figures are suspected to be significantly higher. The Sudanese military symbolically recaptured Khartoum recently, but returning the country to normalcy remains elusive. The RSF retains control over vast swaths of territory, particularly in Darfur, where the UN reported that in a fresh wave of violence, more than 300 civilians were killed last weekend. With the warring sides being accused of committing war crimes and civilian casualties increasing, the call for higher humanitarian assistance has become more urgent than ever.
Now, for more on the internationally troubling living condition of the Sudanese people and the war, which is now 2 years, let's bring in African Affairs analyst Olabode Oseni, who joins me from the United Kingdom, while an international law expert, Livingstone Wechi, also joins me via Zoom here in Nigeria for more analysis. Good to have both of you.
Thank you very much for having me.
This war is now 2 years, 2 years just yesterday, April the 15th. Let me begin with you, Olabode Oseni. What would you say went wrong to make this Sudan conflict a war of attrition?
Thank you very much. The way it is, the war will continue forever. There's not going to be an end to the war in Sudan and to other parts of Africa where there's no homegrown democracy or a system that belongs to themselves. All countries in Africa that are working on a borrowed system or structure, they just will continue to fail. And that is the truth. The truth is, what is going on in South Sudan is very, very sad. 2011, virtually all these South Sudanese that are living in exile thought they are going to El Dorado, where things are going to work well for everybody, but do not know that the kind of leaders, many African leaders that just don't know how to govern, they have always been about themselves, messed everything up. And as you can see now, the devastation, everything that is on the ground now, make it difficult for any sane person to think there are going to be solutions very soon. There are not going to be any.
Livingstone, the hope of ending this conflict were further dimmed when the coalition put together by the UK failed to reach a communique. That's the contact group, failed to reach a communique. And then we also saw that a leader of the paramilitary rapid support forces, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, also declared the establishment of a government rivaling the army-backed administration. Now, do you share fears that Sudan could be heading for a form of partition that's based around the current areas of control?
Well, you know, the history around this issue, as it were, you can best say that the issue of Sudan is a very complex one, rooted in very deep historical factors. I have not lost hope. It's a very sad tale that we still have countries in Africa, while the rest of the continents have made progress. Most of the conflict-ridden areas in the globe today are Black-dominated, and it's not a good story, as it were. I believe that whereas the conflict has continued to rage, that there can be a solution to nip this conflict in the bud. Because, yes, if you go back to 2019, where these two warring parties, the Janjaweed and the Sudan Army Military Force, joined hands together to oust Omar al-Bashir. Ordinarily, there should have been a transition to a democratically elected government before this type of junta came on stream. So, but again, the reliance on foreign solution to local problems have also contributed in sustaining this needless conflict. Because what are the issues here? They are basically economic disparity, colonial legacies. If you go and study reports around the Sudanese war, you realize that they are not different from the issues that led to Nigerian civil war and civil wars in other countries. It's just a challenge between the wealthy northern Sudan and the not so wealthy southern Sudan. It's just a power tussle issue. And I believe that if the African continent, which is also privileged to have certain leadership and
I will come to you come back to you in just a moment on that, because that's a very important point you want to make. But before we even get into that conversation, because you mentioned the issue of foreign actors, and I wanted to get the response of Ms. Oseni on this particular one, because there is a report that was sent to the United Nations detailing how the United Arab Emirates is sending weapons of war to the rapid support forces. And we also understand that Egypt has been supporting the army. Just speak to us as to why you think there has not been sanctions for all of those who have been aiding this war.
Is the question to me?
Yes, Mr. Oseni.
Okay. Yeah, again, like I said, my initial reaction to all this is the fact remains that the actors are tools. They are tools of the foreign powers. And as long as they remain tools of foreign powers, they will continue to deliver devastating, ineffective governance. They will continue to abuse their people. They continue to do what is not good for the people. And the larger picture here is that we need to see that this the problem needs to be re-engineered from home, from bottom, from the people. As long as they continue to take orders, arrangements from foreign powers, you continue to get the same result. That is the truth. And I'm happy to say to you that at 78, and I've gone through politics, I've gone through studies, I've seen all these kind of things, and I know we can continue to do these academic exercise, news analysis, and so on and so forth. We're just not going to go anywhere. The truth of the matter is we need to tell the people that, see what, for example, look at Sekea, what is his name? He put his deputy under house arrest. There've not been any election. I think since independence. So there's so many things that is getting away with because he's being aided and abetted by the foreign powers. And that makes the whole problem more terrible, more unpredictable. I mean, you cannot solve a problem that you know that the causes are this and that, but you are not treating the causes. What we are saying is just the symptoms.
Absolutely, you're saying almost the same thing as Livingstone, who I want to now bring into the conversation, because you were talking about the effect of neocolonialism on the continent. He was talking earlier about the dichotomy between Northern Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa in terms of leadership. And this is for you at Livingstone, because you were speaking to this earlier, Africa taking responsibility for Africa. And I'm going to ask you if you think it's time for the continent, especially Sub-Saharan Africa, to galvanize the necessary political momentum, first to protect civilians on the ground in Sudan, proffer a political solution to the crisis, and then assist at least with humanitarian efforts.
Let me say this point. The Sudan crisis, as I mentioned earlier on, has become a magnet for foreign malign and influence and strategic, corruption. We can't run away from these facts. Today, it is said that Sudan has the highest number of displaced children in the world in the crisis database, and it's not a good story. Africa just has to wake up, because you see, sustained instability in Africa is sustained development for the West. And the West thrives in the instability of Africa. It is a delight to them. And we must tell ourselves that truth. As such, this idea of Africa going to hold conferences and summits in America, in UK, in Geneva to solve our local, they have no, as it were, grounds. We can't in any way get any substance from those meetings, because we only go there to receive instructions on how to further destroy ourselves. And while their black legs there could continue to falter. So the point is that Africa has to take responsibility. There are countries that have gone through this stage and this phase. Nigeria has gone through this phase. South Africa went through its own apartheid era, even if they are still grappling with same in different forms. But these countries that have been able to overcome this type of crisis should come together and expand this conversation to engage the leadership of Sudan, just as it is happening between Rwanda, Burundi, and so on. We should come up as Africa to take responsibility for our own livelihood and our own development. We cannot continue to preach the history of our crisis when others have made advances.
I have, sorry, Livingstone, apologies rather. I have just 1 minute left, and I wanted to quickly give it to Mr. Hosseini, just to also get his thought on how this crisis can be resolved, especially by the African Union.
A good one. And this is where I want to support my co-analyst here. It would have been wonderful if a country like Nigeria that has made so much progress to come in, and some other, maybe I'm not too sure of other African, like maybe Kenya or South Africa, to join hands together to go and help their brother, to go and help the people of South Sudan. Like we said here, we both agree that solution will never come from the world, from the power outside Africa. So these two major countries in Africa, for example, could join hands together and go and help the people of South Sudan resolve issues that they would never be able to resolve without big brothers. And I want to see these countries as big brothers. They should go in there and solve the problem and help them to solve the problem, not from outside.
All right. Thank you both very much. It's been 2 years of that war. We'll see how this, again, the developments in and around the conflict resolution. Thank you for your time. African Affairs Analyst Olabode Hosseini, and international law expert Livingstone Weche.
Thank you very much for having me.